What is your number one obscure animal fact? Story 1. The chemical compound that is used to make fake banana flavor is the same compound honeybees use as an alarm pheromone. So never eat banana sweets near a beehive, and if you suddenly smell bananas near a beehive, run. Ah, that's what that smells like. Fake banana. I am a beekeeper, and when I work my hives, I can smell it when they get upset. I work with African bees, so they are naturally quite defensive. I've been trying to pinpoint what it smells like because it's quite distinctive and not very nice. Thank you. Story 2. The vast majority of Greenland sharks are blind thanks to a special parasite that eats their eyes and replaces them. It is thought that this might actually be helpful because A, their eyesight was shit anyway, B, the parasites wave like lures and may have an anglerfish-like effect, and C, the sharks are super slow, so that might be one of the few ways for them to catch live prey. Imagine something eating your eyeballs and it being an upgrade. Story 3. Butterflies will drink blood given the option. I have a cousin who always had a fear of butterflies that I thought was just kind of a bit. When we were young, we used to walk the train tracks by his house. One walk there was something on the tracks, and as we approached, a swarm of butterflies dispersed from a deer carcass, and he took off running. It's an irrational fear, but I felt for him that day. That was something like out of a horror movie. Story 4. A kangaroo will mate again 1 to 3 days after giving birth. The newborn will latch onto a teat in the pouch, and as long as it thrives, the kangaroo can put its newly fertilized embryo in a state of dormancy and have a backup baby ready to go. If the newborn grows out of the pouch or dies, the kangaroo's hormones will send signals to start the development of the egg, so they can have an adolescent joey, a nursing one, and one in stasis all at the same time. Story 5. Every once in a while, an emperor penguin will do something very strange. Most of them will never do this, but the ones who do have stumped scientists for a while now. Every once in a while, a penguin will turn away from its colony and start heading for the interior of the continent Antarctica, away from the food, the water, and the safety of the colony, off alone towards certain death, almost like zombies. In the past, scientists would try to stop them or take them back to the colony, at which point they'd simply turn around and begin their journey again in the same direction toward the same end. Some would even get violent if they were met with intervention. The prevailing thought is that this penguin is depressed and is committing suicide in a very non-altruistic manner, but nobody knows for sure. There are a lot of possible explanations for this, including the possibility of a fungal infection similar to the cordyceps infection that can cause some colony insects to behave in exactly the same way, potential signs of brain tumors, or other medical conditions that the birds are exposed to. It's well known that birds can experience depression or anxiety, but they tend to respond to this in very immediate ways, such as by overpreening, pulling out their own feathers, screaming or being unusually quiet, loss of appetite, etc. Bird anorexia is a major thing. These activities are signs of redirecting stress, while wandering off into the abyss of an unforgiving frozen continent implies the ability to analyze and think ahead in a way that most birds really don't seem to be able to do. So the reason may not be as immediately obvious as you might think. From what I know, no autopsies have been performed on these rogue penguins, most likely because the conditions are too harsh to hunt their corpses down. But until one is performed, we really have zero idea why they do this. And yet they do. And the behavior is common enough that it's been documented multiple times. Story 6. The inland taipan snake has the strongest, most potent venom on the planet, capable of killing around 290 humans with a single bite. Scaled to mice, a single bite could kill 250,000 mice. That said, bites from the inland taipan to humans have been pretty rare as they usually stay underground and are not overly aggressive unless you jump all over their burrow. They also have a good number of predators who prey on them. Story 7. All the deep-sea anglerfish you see pictures of with the little lights hanging over their heads, they're all female. The males are tiny and born with a terribly weak jaw and a massive hunger. They seek out a female and torn between hungry and horny, they bite her. She then releases an enzyme that fuses the male into her body. She slowly absorbs them into her body with only their little testicles remaining so she can instantly fertilize her eggs when she wants to. Some females have rows and rows of little testicles on their bodies from where they have absorbed multiple males. And you thought your sex life was weird, eh? Story 8. Chickens will come say goodbye to each other when one is dying, and they do soft clicks and will then leave, and that chicken will normally die alone. Some chickens also will kill another chicken because they sense something's wrong with the chicken, a disease for example. Hope you enjoyed these facts. I found them in a book called How to Speak Chickens. Story 9. They feed cows magnets, so when cows eat nails, barbed wire, metal, it stays in one stomach, otherwise they'd get hardware disease and die. Hardware disease is when the metal bit works its way through the stomach and, most of the time, into the cow's heart. It is fatal, as it is difficult to catch early enough to treat, and once past a certain point, is impossible to treat. Metal bits are often found in feed, from parts breaking off the equipment used in making the feed. The magnets usually stay in the first and largest stomach compartment, which is right behind the heart, called the rumen, so cows can cough the magnets up with their cud bolus for rechewing. The magnet simply gets put back in with a bolus gun. You know she has swallowed the magnet once she can lick her nose again, which they very much like to do. A cow's tongue is the length of an average adult's forearm and goes down their throat. In order for them to lick their nose, the base has to come up out of their throat into their mouth, and it can't have anything like the magnet in the way to impede this movement. Story 10. Axolotls are real-life Frankenstein's monsters. Not only do they have the ability to regenerate tissue if it gets damaged, much like a starfish can grow a limb, but if you cut off their arm and, attach it to its back, their cells will form and fix between the back and the dismembered limb. After some time, the arm is completely attached and useful while attached to the back like some disgusting Mr. Potato Head. Some people did a test where they completely severed the head of an axolotl and just pasted it next to the head of another one to see if a head could do the same thing. It worked. The brain started thinking again, ate food after its esophagus was attached, and became a fully functioning two-headed axolotl. Story 11. In Africa, certain tribes communicate directly with birds called honey guides, letting them know they are ready to hunt. The honey guides then lead them to hidden beehives in trees. The tribesmen break open the hives and take the honey, an important resource in their diet, and leave the honey guides the bee larvae and wax to feast on. In fact, it's the only known example of targeted two-way signals between people and a free-living species. Story 12. An octopus's neurons are spread out all throughout its body. When an arm is severed, intentionally or unintentionally, they will still search for and capture food, and then try to bring it back to a non-existent mouth. Basically, an octopus has a bit of its brain in each arm, and the arms move like normal after they've been severed, like how chickens run around without their heads. Story 13. Mine are all whale-related. Whale milk is so fatty that it has the consistency of toothpaste. This enables blue whale calves to grow at a rate of approximately 10 pounds per hour. Whales are the loudest animals on the planet. Humpback whale songs can be heard 10,000 miles away. Whales are the longest-lived mammals on the planet. In 2007, a dead bowhead whale was found in Alaska with a 19th century harpoon embedded in its flesh, making the animal at least 130 years old at the time of its death. The blue whale is the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth, far larger than any prehistoric animal discovered to date. Story 14. Spiders are one of the only animals that stores some of their sensory processing functionality outside of its body. Studies have shown that a spider's reaction to a movement in its web is less like a person responding to the floor moving and more like a person responding to a nervous input from their leg. Spiders use their webs as a direct extension of their body instead of as a tool. Story 15. Mantis shrimp pack the strongest punch of any creature in the animal kingdom. Their club-like appendages accelerate faster than a bullet out of a gun, and just one strike can knock the arm off a crab or break through a snail shell. These small but mighty crustaceans have been known to take on octopus and win. Story 16. Zombies are real. A group of fungi that live inside different insects. The fungi takes control over the insect and will either seek out a high point, then bite down on something, or if it is inside an ant, seek for the nest. Once the body is secured, the fungus will burst out of the insect and spread its spores. Ants will carry infected individuals away from the nest to minimize the spread. Story 17. Bedbugs do something called traumatic insemination. The female bedbug lacks a private cavity, so the male bedbug uses his knob to stab into the female's stomach, pop off, and leave to mate with another. The kicker is, bedbugs can't tell the difference between male and female bedbugs, so a guy could be stabbing another guy in the stomach with his stick and not know it. Story 18. Male cats have barbed that stimulate the female to ovulate. If she doesn't and mates with other males before ovulation is triggered, her litter of kittens could potentially all look different since she holds on to the male's genetic info until then. This is why you can get stuff like a solid black kitten and an orange tabby kitten in the same litter from a mother who is neither. Edit to note, felines are driven by instinct and unburdened by human morality. I told my cat her mother was for the streets and she just kept meowing at me to wake up. Story 19. Roosters don't penetrate their hens, they spray their seed, and hens poo and give birth from the same hole, which is called a vent. Chickens also make a bunch of different chicken calls, and it's fascinating getting to know them. Roosters have huge spurs and sometimes they bleed. When a hen lays her first egg, it's called a fart. Lol. I'm a new chicken owner, in case you can't tell LOL. Story 20. Female ferrets die if they do not mate once they go into heat. When a female ferret goes into heat, their bodies produce a high amount of the hormone estrogen, which will continue to be produced en masse until she is mated. Having such high quantities of estrogen for a prolonged period of time will eventually result in aplastic anemia, which is caused by the damage sustained by the bone marrow and blood cells by the high levels of the hormone. Story 21. Probably already said, but I'm sharing it anyway. An ostrich's eye is bigger than its brain. An ostrich's eye is 5 times the size of a human eye. An ostrich's eye is the largest of all bird eyes. Their eyes are about the size of a pool ball, like the kind you go to a bar and poke with a stick, not the kind you toss around in water. All of which except for the brain part seems reasonable seeing as they are the largest bird in the world. They aren't the brightest, but they have very keen eyesight. Also, contrary to popular belief, they do not bury their heads in the sand-dirt ground when they are scared or sense a predator. They aren't that bird-brained, haha, bad joke, but instead they are more likely to flop down on the ground and not move, trying to blend in with the ground so that they aren't seen. I don't know why I know these things, but it makes for a fun random facts story. Story 22. Pigeons are not actually birds. They're government drones that monitor heavily populated areas. The government uses birds because it's in bird nature to get away when approached by a larger specimen, thus not giving us a chance to examine it. Also, birds migrate, which is a great cover-up to get the pigeons back to government facilities to repair them and get them ready. Birds are also known to sit on power lines, so the government used this to their advantage to make it less suspicious when they recharge. Story 23. Anglerfish are one of the few species that evolved for polyandry, and when the fish was first discovered, they only found females and wondered where the males were until they started comparing it to a much smaller species of fish where they were only finding males and realized that it was the same species. The way anglerfish mate is the female excretes pheromone trails into the water for males to follow, and when they do finally meet the smaller male hooks its mandibles into the side of the female. He begins to fuse to her side until he's nothing but a lump that produces sperm whenever the female lays her eggs, and she can have dozens of those lumps all over her body. Story 24. Every complex animal that has a larynx has a laryngeal nerve. This runs from the vagus nerve or similar structure to the larynx, but it doesn't run directly there. In humans, the distance between the vagus nerve bundle and the larynx is only a couple of inches, but the nerve takes a couple of feet of detour to loop around parts of the heart and run back up. This happens in every animal that has a spine and a larynx, including giraffes, where the detour might be over a dozen feet. It's an artifact of how early nerve structures developed in the first vertebrate animals. Those nerves just happened to be on the wrong side of the heart and just kept getting longer and longer as the heart moved further and further away. Story 25. Falcons have weaker claws than eagles and hawks, so they instead put their talons into a fist-like position, fly up high, and essentially dive-bomb their prey by delivering a punch to them at high speeds. This breaks bones and can cause paralysis. Falcon punch was real the whole time. Story 26. Cone snails use poison harpoons to hunt fish. Conus geographus, which has beautiful markings that resemble maps, can sometimes be found on the beach, and if you pick it up, it will jab you with a cocktail of up to 100 different neurotoxins. Death comes within 90 minutes, unless you get to a hospital that can support your breathing until it wears off. Story 27. Most humans have 3 functional cones, color-sensitive cells, in their retinae. The combination of signals from each of the 3 channels gives humans the full range of color vision we typically enjoy. Color blindness means that at least one of those 3 channels is either reduced or absent. 1 out of 12 men or 1 out of 200 women will have that type of reduced color vision. On the other end, a very few women will have 4 channels, tetrachromacy, giving them pretty much superpowered color discrimination within the same spectrum space. In other species, many bird species are tetrachromatic by default, extending into the infrared or ultraviolet space. But the ultimate animal record is the mantis shrimp, which has no less than 16 different cones color channels in their retinae. They can see color like no other creature possibly could. Story 28. A Inuk hunter watched this many years ago, and no marine biologists that I can find know about this, but the story is passed on. So the story goes, when a narwhal's tusk is broken, 2 other narwhals will use their tusks to hold the first narwhal's tusk still. A third narwhal will move forward so his tusk will enter the broken tusk and stamp the tip of his tusk, so the one with the broken tusk could be sealed. The story is passed on, and there are hunters who got a narwhal with a broken tusk with another tip inside it. Would love to see it happen. Story 29. Koalas are incredibly stupid creatures. Their diet is already because all they eat is eucalyptus leaves off of trees, and those barely provide any nutrients, so they have to eat those for a huge majority of their day. If you left a koala in a room full of eucalyptus leaves that were picked off the trees already, the koala would starve to death because it only understands that it has to pick it off the tree itself. Story 30. There is a nerve called the recurrent laryngeal nerve in every vertebrate. In fish, it takes the most direct path from the brain to the throat, but in mammals, because of how evolution works iteratively, being easier to patch a problem than to completely rewrite how the body is fundamentally structured, the nerve ends up wrapping around the aorta before traveling back up to the throat. This is a bit silly in humans, as the nerve ends up being a good 12 inches longer than it needs to be. But it is truly a comedy of errors in the giraffe, where the nerve starts in the brain, travels 8 feet down the neck to wrap around the aorta, then travels back up the neck to the throat to innervate the larynx, which is only a few inches away from where it began its journey. Whenever anyone argues for intelligent design, show them the recurrent laryngeal nerve of the giraffe. Story 31. I have 2. 1. While visiting a Department of Natural Resources station for a field trip in my early years, a game warden told us muskies, muskellunge, and northern pike stop growing new teeth while they are pregnant, so all the minerals and vitamins in their system will be used for developing eggs. I have not found a ton of evidence to confirm this online, but I have caught several pikes after they spawn that seem to have considerably fewer teeth than usual. 2. Foxes mate for life. I grew up hunting, no, not trophy hunting, I'm not going to India to kill Dumbo's grandson, with my uncles and grandfather teaching me much of what I knew, mostly deer and upland game birds. I asked my uncle why we don't hunt or trap foxes. That was one of the most serious responses I had ever seen from him. They might be a pest to many of us, but they mate for life. If their mate is killed, so are generations of them. That had kind of surprised me because I had never seen my uncle turn down a hunting season on pretty much any animal that was legal. I know it sounds stupid to what you've been taught, but as a hunter, it's your job to conserve nature, not to kill off a species. Then went into detail about species that have been, or were previously, hunted to near extinction or extinct completely. Things like buffalo, rhinos, elephants, etc. Learned a lot that day. Story 32. Polar bears have a 3-day mating season every year, but they also have a higher chance of having twins, 2-3 of litters, which is why they aren't dying out as fast. Females have also been known to adopt lost cubs. They also have an average of 5 litters in a lifetime due to the 2.5-year grace period in which they stay with their cubs the whole time. They also can go months without eating despite not hibernating like most bears because less than 2% of their hunts are successful. Story 33. There is something known as the mafia hypothesis in birds. Basically, there are parasite birds that lay their eggs in other nests. The question was, why do the victim birds not adapt to recognize the eggs and toss them out of the nest? Scientists removed parasite eggs from nests and observed the parasite mama coming back and destroying ant nests and their eggs that were missing the parasite eggs, mafia style. To combat this, some birds will notice a parasite egg, but not act until they lay their own. That way from above it looks like the same number of eggs are present. Other birds will actually sing their eggs a password, so any chicks that don't sing the right tune after hatching get killed. Story 34. Chameleons' tails curl down and their color changes have nothing whatsoever to do with their environment. It's completely genetic and they have no control over it. Their color changes are based on mood and temperature. As such, the chameleon depicted in the Disney movie Tangled is entirely unrealistic since his tail curls up, not down, and he changes colors based on the environment and whatever he is eating. Also, most of the world's chameleon species are found exclusively in Madagascar. Also, a chameleon's tongue is about the length of their body. Triple also, they can see with pinpoint detail up to half a mile. They've got hella binoculars, and they have about 342 degrees of field of view blocked only behind underneath them. Their skin is also hydrophobic, and they can see infrared, and their bones have unique infrared signatures, so they see each other in neon colors. I'm a chameleon guy if you haven't noticed. LOL Story 35. If rats are in an area, no matter how small or large, where the temperature reaches really high temps, like really close to a fire or lava for an example, I have no other examples for that, so don't judge me. They will bury themselves in literally anything. This can be used for inhuman executions where you have a person tied down, a rat, a metal cage without a bottom, and a blowtorch. I'm sure people don't want me to get into detail, so I won't. Story 36. Mantis shrimp have the most advanced eyes in the animal kingdom. They use 16 cones in their eyes. Humans have 3. These cones are what give our sensitivity to colors, namely just red, green, and blue. And the combination of these 3 colors makes up our full spectrum ability to see other colors. Interestingly, they don't use this to have super amazing color discrimination, but instead they can see light polarization, something completely hidden from humans normally. Polarization has a stronger effect on reflected light from animal shells, skins, and scales than surrounding rock and sediment, meaning they can overcome many animals' camouflage adaptations. We actually use polarization as a tool in microscope imaging to make microbes and other samples really light up and become visible beautifully, so you can get an idea why the mantis shrimp has a huge advantage in hunting prey with this super skill to see polarization.